Hello everyone, in this video we are going to see the concept of constructor in Java. So we know that Java is an object-oriented language where Java is a collection of classes. Java program is a collection of classes. So the class is a collection of methods and members, or we call as data and functions. And here this process of combining data and method is called encapsulation. Now let us see what is a constructor. Constructor is a method in Java which is a default constructor method which has the name of the class. So the constructor name is same as the class name. So that is the constructor name. Now here let us see, in Java a constructor is a block of codes similar to the method, and as the name implies, what does this constructor does is it constructs the memory area for the data being used and also the functions being called for. So it creates a data memory area for the data, and that is when an object is initiated instantiated, here the constructor is called. Okay, so now it is called when an instance of the class is created. What does it mean is, for a class you create an object. Once you create an object, the default constructor is automatically called by the system to create the space for the data of the class or member of the class. At the time of calling constructor, memory for the object is allocated in the memory. So the memory space, for example, the class may have an integer variable, float variable, an array, or a structure or a record, a simple data structure or a secondary data structure, an array or list, whatever it may be. For everything, the memory space is allotted for the object. That is the purpose of the constructor. And it is a special type of method which is used to initialize the object. Now let us see what is the syntax of this constructor. Every time an object is created using the new keyword, at least one constructor is called. So new is the keyword which helps to construct the object for the class. So once the new keyword is used to construct the object for the class, that time when constructor is being called, then only the object will be created. It calls a default constructor if there is no constructor available in the class. In such case, Java compiler provides a default constructor by default. So as I said previously, the constructor is automatically called, that is the default constructor, if any specific constructor is not mentioned explicitly in the class. Okay, now let us see the rules for creating a Java constructor. So there are two rules for defining a constructor. There are two rules. They are, number one, constructor name must be the same name as its class name. Second one is, a constructor must have no explicit return type. So here we know that a function has a return type, then function name, and then the arguments or the parameters, but a constructor that has no explicit return type. Okay, a Java constructor cannot be abstract, static, final, and synchronized. So when you declare a constructor, we cannot declare the constructor as an abstract or static or final or in the synchronized mode. So now let us see the constructor with an example. So the two types of constructors are no argument constructor, which is the default constructor, and the parameterized constructor. So parameters are the arguments. Let us see one by one with the example. The parameterized constructor, here you can see the example of an parameterized constructor. So what does it contains? It contains some parameters in its argument. Okay, some value, that some data types in its as a parameter. So you can see the example over here. So class student 4 is the class name, and the open brace starts for the class. Int id and string name are the members of the class, or the data of the class. Now we are creating a parameterized constructor, for example. So as we have seen earlier, the rule of this constructing a constructor is the student, that is the class name, will be the name of the constructor. So now string student 4. Student 4 is the name of the constructor, which is the class name student 4. Here the cases should also match, they are case sensitive. Okay, now Inside this we are having int in and string n. These are all the two parameters for this constructor student4. Now we have explicitly declared int I and string n as two parameters for the constructor student4. So this is an example of an parameterized constructor. So inside the constructor we can have the statements which may initialize the constructor data. So id is equal to I and name is equal to n. So this id and this name are declared in the class, and this int I and string n are passed as parameters. So whatever the value passed as parameters is I is passed to id and this n is passed to name, and we have closed the constructor, and we have to close one more braces for the class student4. So that's all the example of the parameters constructor. Now let us see the default constructor. So what is a default constructor? As we have seen earlier, it is a constructor which has no arguments. Okay, so now this is an example of a constructor, default constructor. So class bike1. So bike1 is the class name, so naturally bike1 is the constructor name, which is a default constructor. You can see within the braces there are no arguments, there is no argument, it is empty. So it is a default constructor. And now we are just given a statement like system.out.println byte is created, a message just to display on the screen. So that's all the two examples, for one for the parameters constructor, another for the default constructor. Hope it will be easy to follow the concept of constructors, and thanks for watching.